Welcome to another episode of Mindset Makeovers. My name, of course, is Lena Moxon, and I have today Debbie Gleason sitting opposite me. Well, not really. We're virtually sitting opposite each other today. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thank you.
Where are we finding you? Remind me, where exactly are you?
I am in Alabama in the US.
And what's that like?
Woo, girl. So I'm originally I lived in DC. I grew up in DC, and then I went to school in Chicago. So I don't know if you're familiar with that at all, but Chicago is like the windy city. So it's freezing cold, snow, you get all four seasons pretty much. But here, Alabama, I'm going to describe it just rainy, muggy, hot. Yeah, a lot of rain.
It's such an interesting thing when, we move, and I've been a person that I've moved quite frequently, probably a little too frequently.
Yes.
Within my life, and just the way that we see just different kind of, I guess, segments of our life representing just different things, maybe different iterations of self, different expressions of self. If Alabama was holding space for something in particular within you or within your life right now, can you reflect on what that might be? It's kind of hard when we're in the middle of it. Yeah, you can.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point and metaphor in a way. I recently see it more as a way to surrender and to I guess answer to a different calling or to other people's needs. I guess being here is more because of my children and my family. But if it wasn't for them, I'd be elsewhere. I'd be a city girl, So I think it's really about kind of letting go, really just kind of going with the flow, surrendering, like I said. Yeah.
Surrender. And I think also selflessness are words that
yes,
we understand logically and we can conceptualize it, but the actual integration and embodiment of both of those things can feel hard. Do you want to speak on any insight you have into that?
Yeah. I'll tell you, when I first came down here, I had a lot of frustration and it turned into resentment. I had actually just turned down a job in Chicago. They were promoting me to be a assistant director at a nursing home. And that was actually a goal of mine. And so it was going to lead me to a whole other path. And then I had my first child. We didn't have a lot of help in Chicago. We had no family, either me or my husband. So it was kind of just us. And his idea was, let's just move to where his family's at and get help. And that sounded great, but I felt like there were other options that could have, but so when I moved here, I kind of did it and assimilated and adjusted. But I think that was just kind of like a shock to me almost. It was just such a shock that I was just in this almost a detached, this is just where we're at. And then it wasn't until 2-3 months later, I was just met with a whole bunch of resentment and anger and towards my husband, but also for myself, why didn't I put my foot down? Why didn't I suggest the other options that I felt could have helped, So again, it just being in that and then kind of trusting where I'm being guided to after that. So I acknowledged all that and then just kind of had to be carried out of that into, okay, well, what is my path now? Because clearly this wouldn't have happened just because, there is definitely some type of, clockwork or something behind this, So I just kind of had to lean into that.
I think it's such an interesting thing and such a relatable thing, particularly as women, where we come into this phase of our lives where whether we like it or not, we are invited into an expression and experience of selflessness, where we start to prioritize the needs of our family or our children above our own. And the thing that I have experienced most recently is the consequences of a lot of very conscious choices that I made to create safety and stability and security for my little family, which is something that I really desired, right? Deciding that I was going to put roots down and buy a house here. And, even in terms of I live in a regional town now, not a city, because of what we could afford here as compared to there. all choices that I stand behind, all choices that I understand, and I think ultimately are good choices for my family. But as the dust has settled on this life, I find myself looking around and I feel patterns arising within me when things get uncomfortable or things get a little tricky, or there are certain emotions that I experience because life just presents me with things that, triggers the parts of me that are that are there waiting to be triggered. I can't just pick up and run. And I can't just make decisions for myself. And I can't just do what I want to do because of the decisions that I've made that ultimately are in the highest interest of my family, but maybe truthfully, not in the highest interest of my full expression as a human. And it's such a fucked up thing trying to just be with all of that without letting ourselves just go to resentment and anger, right? Really trying to hold space for the trust and the faith and the guidance that's been given to us to make these decisions and to be in these places. And I just want to speak to the fact that it's hard. It's really hard.
Very.
I
think too, when, because even now there's times like even talking about it, it was like I felt it again a little bit, like a little nudge, it just like taking me back. But I think it's also a good reminder of where we need to care for ourselves, just like a pain in the body, like, oh, my back hurts. Well, maybe I should go lay down. Or maybe I shouldn't have lifted the thing that I lifted earlier today. Like it's just kind of this nudge of like, where do I actually need to care for myself? Maybe I need to like uplift myself a little bit more, encourage myself, or remind myself of all of the things that I've done in the time that I was here. And not all of this time was full of resentment,
And I think, it definitely presents opportunity for us to be really kind of truthful about where there is work to be done within us. So I can see like the compulsion, I'll use myself as the example, the compulsion to like just travel somewhere and seek out some adventure and start something new is actually bypassing the need that I can recognize for me to actually understand how to be in secure, long-term committed relationship.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Right. Relationship with all things, not just my husband, like relationship with my business as it stands, relationship with my community as it is. How do I get past that initial kind of like, I don't know, meet and greet phase of life and actually get into connected, committed relationship? And I recognize myself, I've never done that. Life has presented me as a child with this kind of normalization of every 4 to 5 years, everything kind of changes. And that's been hard for a lot of reasons, but also it's become like supportive of me not feeling like I ever have to work things out because things are just going to change. And if things aren't good, I can just pick up and move and try something new somewhere else. So I'm really in a season right now where I'm like, oh shit, I'm being invited to find out what it means to stay. And I actually have no point of reference for this. And I don't have the resources for this. And I'm learning on the go. And that's where I'm at.
It's funny you point out like that pattern in yourself, because it just like, I just had a flash in myself too of me always kind of bending in a way for somebody else. So like, just the example between me and my husband, I definitely could have, presented other options or tried something different at that time. But I didn't. I was just always used to like, well, if this is how this person wants it, or if this is how this situation is going, then this is the way we're going to go. And so for me now, it is different. I guess I'm just finding, I don't want to say finding my voice more, but I guess maybe trusting my own decision or my own internal pull for different things, and not taking somebody else's suggested turn right off the bat, like really kind of looking at both, or having a more back and forth of, well, this is why I think that this would go better, or not better, but this is why I want it to be this way.
Yeah. Trusting that our greatest support might be an offering of our own idea or our own vision rather than just our compliance,
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think that's so relatable that so many of us, experience a desire to be selfless and to be supportive in a way that we kind of make ourselves available to just hope for best case scenario and just go with the flow and know that we will land on our feet wherever we are. But then we do sometimes find ourselves in situations or circumstances that don't really feel like they're in alignment with who we are because we've allowed ourselves to go with the flow. And I think that's the hard thing that we're all trying to work out, like the discernment between what does it mean to go with the flow and let life guide us, and at what point do I go like, this isn't even my river? How did I end up
How did I
here?
get here? Exactly. So relatable. Yes. Oh my goodness. And I think now, personally, I'm trying to investigate it a little bit more to see how I could help others or explain it. But I do feel like I am now, maybe more because the focus, I'm more conscious and aware of what I'm doing and saying and thinking and how I'm interacting with other people, that I am now able to kind of tap in and know when, like you said, I'm in somebody else's waters versus my own, and like, okay, whoa, I need to backtrack, or I don't necessarily need to go in that direction. And also learning when is a time to rest for myself and not really punishing myself for not posting something or not jumping on somebody's Zoom call or whatever, because in my mind it's like, oh, I'm not being productive, or it's a missed opportunity. These like old, patterns that were in my mind. But now I'm learning to like navigate when to take a rest, when to sit back and not feel bad, versus when I actually do feel more aligned and pulled and called and like, now I'm inspired and let's go.
Yeah, which is such an important thing to navigate and know for self, right? At the beginning of the year, I did a breathwork immersion, I guess you could call it. It was like a 5 or 6 hour journey with Lucas Mackey does Awaken breathwork, and I did it in person. And I had very clear downloads during that time. And, I came out of it and was like, felt clearly guided that I have to soften in all ways, physically, emotionally, spiritually, just soften. And I've done that in all ways, including my own body. Like I've let myself let go of the kind of rigid ways of being just around like movement and exercise and how I've had to look. And my body has responded with a beautiful exhale. But sometimes I will like catch a glimpse of myself, or even like my own hands on my own body that now feels so different because it was one way for so long. Shocks me. It shocks me. And so I share this because we encourage rest and we encourage release and we encourage softening. And I think we should lean into it. And I think we should learn how to feel safe in it. But I just share to highlight that it can feel very disorienting initially, and it can feel very scary to let go of the productivity and the rigid control we have over doing to allow ourselves just to be. Did you want to speak to that?
I guess that's kind of what I was trying to say before. I think you spoke it more beautifully, but I agree. I think sometimes too, I've noticed with myself, if I am giving myself more of that compassion and that time, and I'm doing it or responding a little bit quicker to that, rather than, second guessing or pulling up the old feeling of not being productive or something. I actually am able to, I think, kind of align to something bigger, or have like another spark kind of come up, and feel more passionate and driven because I've given myself that rest.
So is it do you have kind of ways, I guess I'm asking if there are like rituals or practices or methods that you have, not for someone necessarily to replicate, but just as example for how we might make ourselves available for something like this?
Yeah, I think really, it's personal to everybody. I know for myself, I'm my sister thinks I'm weird because I love to run. I love running. She's like, that's so weird. Like, but for me, it's running. When I run, I'm like meditative. Like I get into like such a zone that it's almost like I tell you, like sometimes I get so into it that I don't even feel like I'm in this body. Like I'm somewhere else. So I think it's different for everybody, whether that's meditation, running, something I really do enjoy. I don't know if you've done like body brushing. Do you know what that is?
I know what it is, but I haven't done it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is such a good reset for me. I try to do it maybe like once a month, just so that I can really feel a difference. But it's just getting a brush for the shower or the bath. And what you do is you kind of spiral, or like do a circle. They say to brush towards the heart. So if like you're going up from like the leg, then you want to go upward. But if you're coming down or like coming from the arm, you want to go down. So you always want to go in the direction of the heart, depending on where you're brushing from. But you want to do that with your skin being dry and then get in the shower. I then also use the brush with like some soap or something and use it as well in the shower to really get a good scrub. And afterwards, I'm telling you, I feel like reborn. So that's something that I really like. Yeah.
I love that, because that's like relatively easy for most people, I think, to do that. And I love that you're not saying it's an everyday, like even a once a month thing.
No, yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's no problem with doing it every day, but I feel like it really gives my body a reset to like go a certain amount of time without doing it. And then it makes such a difference, because it's like, oh wow, we haven't done this in a while. And I think the cells in the body, they can, there's something to it, like, just in our somatic work, is just like moving things around. When we're doing that, we're giving extra attention to parts of our bodies that we probably wouldn't have, especially like postpartum. Like I had 2 C-sections. So I'm used to being very like cautious, around my stomach area. And that's just like, I mean, even long after those births, so that's just how I am, just because of that scar, and it is kind of sensitive. But when I do the body brushing, I just feel like it does something in that area. It really kind of helps. Maybe there's, obviously trauma still there. So I think,
girl, that's a conversation for probably another day, but I think there's so much. I've had a C-section too, and it's such an interesting conversation around what has occurred for the body and what's trapped in the body. And even I love the way that you're describing, it's almost like the reclaiming of that part of us that we've somehow othered within us, right? Like we might accept it and love it and all of that, but it has become this, like, this is my body and this is where the C-section scar is, right? To fully integrate it back into self and to trust it and know it and feel like we can, even as you're describing that, like to brush over it, you would hesitate. There's a like gentleness.
Acknowledging it. Like I see, and I'm here and like for it,
I remember I've spoken about it on another podcast too, after I had my son, like, a couple of months after I'd had my son, even being intimate with my husband again, I felt myself kind of like trying to position myself in a way that wasn't making it, I don't know, obvious.
Yeah.
And I tell the story of how like I just turned all the lights on and was like, can you just look at this fully so I can get it out of my head? Like,
I love that. Yeah.
Can we just be with this? And he was just like, I am not thinking about that at any point when we're doing this. And I was like, okay. So it really is. I think it's a definite thing. And I'm sure it's not just C-sections that it occurs, when the body has kind of been manipulated or contorted, or, something has happened to the body in any way, it makes sense that, it needs our attention, it needs our awareness, and it needs some sort of almost ritualization of integrating it back into part of the whole.
Another piece too that I sometimes kind of miss, so I wanted to mention it, is the bottom of our feet. So with the brush, I remember one day I just had this impulse to do it. I was like, you know what, I don't brush the bottom of my feet when I do this. Like I'll brush the tops of it, but I don't do the bottom. So I ended up doing it one day, and it was just, I felt like tingles in my body. It was just, that's what my body needed, And so sometimes we don't think of those, like, because it seems so random, but there's just, again, different parts that we're, like you said, claiming again. Like that's an area that I clearly was like neglecting, and it was like thanking me. It was like, yes. So yeah.
So interesting, isn't it? I know, like in somatic practice recently, in like a guided meditation that I've been offering, I'll be saying to women, like, using your own hands, just like touch your own body, be with your own body. But one of the prompts that I give is, like you're describing, to touch parts of your body that we might never pay any attention to. And it's a silly thing, like the skin between our fingers, like behind the ear, just parts of us that are us, but we never actually like take a moment to kind of be with. And I think it sounds like such a silly and almost like pointless act, but to really be with all parts of us and to love all parts of us means at some point we need to be with all parts of us and love all parts of us. And so I think what you're offering up is such a simple but probably profound way of just really beginning to explore You know, how can I be with my body in a way that I know is offering it something a little different, in a way that is gentle and it's not going to confront it, but it allows me to just expand my sense of self and being with self.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love that. I love that. I could talk to you all day long. I hope you know how much has been in this conversation as an offering for women to just kind of just like stop and consider how they're feeling in the moment they're in the situation they're in, what's there for them, and how they can meet their own personal needs day after day. And that in itself is everything that we need, right?
I was going to say too, this is a little random, but kind of connected. I had this thought yesterday. I was driving on my way after dropping my kids off. I was on my way to work, and I had this random thought of like years ago in high school. And I feel like this probably came to me to share. So I just want to put it out there really quick. But in high school, my freshman year, that's our first year. I don't know, you guys probably use different terms out there, but first year in high school. So I was like new to the school. I signed up to play volleyball. And I had never played like with a team, but I had played with some friends. And so I kind of knew things about it. But one day on my way to practice, it was in a gym and we had to like cross the street. We're walking together and I see these girls holding these sticks going to something else. And I was like, what is that? So I don't even know. Very quickly, soon after that, probably that night, I figured out what it was, and it was field hockey. I don't know if you guys are familiar with field hockey. Okay, cool. Field hockey. And just like in that same week, I dipped out of volleyball and I signed up for field hockey, never having played it, didn't know what it was, went and, bought the things that I needed for it. And I was reflecting on it yesterday and I was like, back then, not having so much experience with like failure or setbacks and things like that, because everything's new and fresh and fun and exciting. I was quick to just, make that decision for myself. And I was like, why is it so hard now? Do I feel like the stakes are higher in some way? And so I was like, you know what, that flash, that insight was just for me to remind myself that the next time I feel pulled to something, there's a reason, and to just go. It'll, the things will be sorted out. Like, just go.
I love it. Letting that land. I love it. And I think there's so much wisdom that can be claimed from past versions of ourselves that are still really current versions of ourselves, that maybe we haven't really witnessed the wisdom that was being embodied in those moments, and when we get to recall like, oh, that's actually who I am. I'm capable of that. I've done that. We had a big family wedding recently, and my son, who's 4, just took to the dance floor like he was just made for it. Like, I'm talking, there was like a whole circle of people around him cheering for him, and homeboy was just like living his best life, soaking it all up, free expression, dancing, zero fucks. And I looked at him and just remembered so clearly, like, yeah, that's the level of confidence and certainty and just free spiritedness that I once embodied too. Like, that's how I came. That's how I came. And I think, I won't get into it. I think that's how most of us come. But for me, it directly being my own son and just watching him do something that has not been taught to him, has not even necessarily been obviously encouraged. It just came so innately through him. Just to have just that moment where I looked at him and let him be his own little being, but really appreciated the reminder, like, yeah, I came like that too. That's not very far removed from me. Was a nudge I needed for all of the times that I sit back a little, or I tell myself that I'm feeling some kind of way. Maybe I'm feeling shy or unsure or uncertain if I can show up. And it was just a beautiful reminder to be like, bitch, come on. You know exactly who you actually are. Like, turn the camera on and let's go. Don't even pretend. So I think it's beautiful when we can look back at, the decisions that we've made or the things that we've experienced and remember and reclaim who we came as before the world or experiences may have convinced us otherwise.
Exactly. Yes.
Debbie, where can people get in contact with you, learn more from you, see what you are putting out and offering through you into the world? Where's the best place to find you?
On Instagram. That's where I'll stay for now. We'll branch out soon.
You're on TikTok too, though, right? I see you on TikTok.
I am.
Yeah.
Sometimes I merge the stuff over, but I'm not.
Okay.
I'm practicing being more tech savvy, so we'll expand there soon.
Cool. Instagram, or Debbie's details will be in the bio for you guys to access. Thank you for opening up conversation within this space and within anybody that's connecting with us today.
Thank you so much, Lena. This was great. Thank you.